Hello and welcome to another edition of 10 Minutes with Dr. Tyi-Sanna. I'm your host, Dr. Tyi-Sanna Jones from MindWorks Collaborative. Today, we are joined by Miss Candice. She is the parent of a rock star firecracker that I've got to watch grow up via Facebook. I met Candice and had her on my list of moms to interview for May, but last week, she posted a proud mommy moment that was data centered. So I reached out. I have to read this post to you guys because I was so excited. The post reads, when Gabby was in kindergarten, I actually thought I would have to quit my job to support her in school. We've had to ride a roller coaster with private testing, hiring attorneys, creating spreadsheets to analyze problem behaviors, crying as I rushed down the highway to pick her up because of repeated behavior incidences. Today, I participated in another successful IEP meeting with a great team. To hear how far Gabby has come makes me jump for joy. I am so proud of this girl. And that excitement just, I felt it. Like everything about that is beautiful, Candice. Like, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So will you please introduce yourself and give us a brief overview of Gabby's kindergarten year?
I will. So I'm Candice Coletrane. I am the mom of an amazing little girl named Gabby. And Gabby is now 11 years old. She has a rare genetic disorder called Bainbridge-Roper syndrome. And when she was diagnosed, there were only 10 cases known worldwide. So it's a big question mark as to what would present as she got older. When she was in kindergarten, she was nonverbal. Her original prognosis was that she would never walk, she would never talk, she would never eat or feed herself. But Gabby can run, skip, jump. She can, write. She uses a communication device, but she actually has some limited language, but she has some words now. So definitely, the sky is the limit. And I say, never limit your child, never say never. But in kindergarten, the biggest challenge was Gabby's intelligence and IQ was a lot greater than her verbal language. And so she was a big question mark to a lot of educators. They wanted to definitely say, maybe we need to put her in an autism setting. But the challenge that I had there is because her, even though her expressive language wasn't strong, her receptive language, her social engagement, those things were actually very strong. And her pediatrician, she has an amazing pediatrician who's been on this journey with me since day one. And, he really advocated, and he says, when she starts school, you need to make sure that you push for her to stay in a setting where she can see her typically developing peers, because that's going to be important. She has strong social, skills. So make sure that people utilize and take advantage of those strengths. But in kindergarten, we had a lot of challenges. People just didn't know where to place Gabby. There wasn't a setting that fit. And so, like I said, we had to definitely hire attorneys to definitely make sure that our voices were being heard and that we could properly advocate for Gabby. But over time, she went through, I think, 3 different schools. And now she's at her placement school, so her zone school. And she has a team that we've built a relationship. So definitely being present made a huge difference. But also they got to learn me over the years as well. So I'm an engineer, so data is my thing. And so one of the things that when we moved to our neighborhood and, she started attending her current school, one of the things that I was very adamant about was that we needed data, right? If something's happening that I don't see at home, there's some trigger or there's something in the environment that's different. So let's see what maybe the difference is. And so I actually requested a behavior intervention plan. Now that can, I kind of caution parents, it can go certain ways. A lot of times teachers will, actually try to initiate a BIP or a behavior intervention plan. But in this case, I wanted it initiated so that I could request the data. I needed them recording. So what's happening throughout the day? And so with that behavior intervention plan, we created like this table or this spreadsheet where throughout the day, they would have to mark, if she was on task, if she was using safe hands and feet. And so there were different categories that they would basically give her a score. And so if she reached a certain number of points, she could get a check. And so that also motivated Gabby because she had a visual cue of, am I doing what I'm supposed to do or if I'm off track? So it helped her. But each day that table came home and that spreadsheet came home with the details. And so I would be able to see, okay, at math, it seems to peak. And so I use that, that spreadsheet each day to kind of track, where are we seeing these peaks? And it actually ended up being that she usually, demonstrated or displayed those behaviors when it was a non-preferred activity that was really difficult for her. And it generated anxiety. So we saw that. And then we also saw at the end of the day when she was just completely exhausted, that as well. And so that allowed us to be able to put in the right plan. So, we started to switch up her schedule. If math is a tough thing, we do it in the mornings. But definitely, I would say the data helps because there were also cases where, they wanted to make a case at one time that she didn't fit in the general education setting. But I could use that data to also say, hey, there's no difference between how she's, demonstrating behavior between the general ed and the resource class. It's the subject. So she would display the same, anxiety and behaviors in the general ed as the resource. She just didn't like math. So I definitely say, data always talks, right? And so, and you can't argue the data. And so, a lot of times in those IEP meetings, if they said, hey, we see this, I look at the data. And so now, they're great. They actually refer to the data first and they don't even come in with anything if it doesn't correlate with the data. So that is something that I definitely say that all parents need to use in their toolbox for sure.
Yeah, so collecting those data systems, and that's huge. And I love the fact that I'm an engineer. This is where I stand. I know, how do I make this work for me? Because the frustrating part, I remember when we first were connected, the placement, she doesn't fit. Well, an IEP says it's individualized. So let's use that eye to decide where our kid is going to go. And so you get this data to say, okay, we know this about her. Or this doesn't match what I see at home. What are you all doing? What else is happening? And so being able to use data to create the picture and get an idea what else is going on, what's happening before, what's happening during, what's happening after. We need to see a bigger picture. And so data helps us paint that picture. Gabby doesn't like math, period. I don't care if you have it, in the gen ed classroom, in the resource room, on a tree, on a house, green eggs and ham. I'm like, wherever you have it, she's still not going to like math. So we need to figure out how to make this tolerable and to know that, how do we make this work for her? And we can use the data for that. And then 3 pieces of advice you would share with other parents about creating data systems and collecting data and being able to advocate from that perspective.
So I would definitely say, keeping your own notes, right? And so, like you said, as they're reporting things, I would just make note and I would say, well, I don't see that at home. That's just not typical behavior that we see at home. But walk me through, what subject was she in? What was the transition? Was there a transition? And so I'd say definitely make sure that you ask those questions. But if you can get them to do a daily log of that behavior, and so that you can see it and say, oh, okay, she's doing really well here. Okay, towards the end of the day, and kind of see those patterns of, she starts to kind of, dwindle off or fade off at the end. Maybe, I need to adjust something at home, or maybe she needs a longer break. And so those things will help you as well as you're trying to figure out, those goals within the IEP or the, behavior intervention plan if you, choose to go that route as well. But the data definitely helps you to craft those goals as well.
So you've already talked about two really important pieces of advice. It's one, keeping your own data and asking those questions of follow-up, really getting people to explore the when you were seeing it, time of day, what the subject is it transition? So really trying to isolate when certain things are happening, but having a system in place so that information can be collected. That is huge. So give me one more piece of advice you would give your parents in being able to create a successful IEP. Like what would you say they need to do so they can create the atmosphere for the successful IEP?
One thing, and this is just kind of more of a tactical thing, as you're analyzing that data, chart it, graph it, whatever you need, but bring in some papers to say, hey, I've looked at this ahead of time. And so her teachers will still comment, and her IEP team still comments that I would come in with a folder, and I had, taken those, charts, those daily logs, and I would, chart it out. I would say, hey, I'm noticing peak in math, and I had, graph charts, right? And I would say, oh, she had, 14 instances of behavior, and they hit, 8 of them hit here in math or whatever, right? And so I would have those bar graphs. I would plot it out. Now, a lot of that is, it's kind of like a psychological thing, right? It's kind of more of okay, here's a parent who's done her homework. She's coming in, and, we can't just, come in and say, this is what we think, and, kind of do it lightheartedly, right? They have to really be intentional. And at first they would make jokes, but I was okay with your jokes. It's like, okay, she's going to have her spreadsheets. Yes, I'm going to have my spreadsheets. Over time. So now when we have an IEP, I don't even look at the data ahead of time, to be honest, because I trust the team. And I know that the team that I'm working with, they know Gabby and they know mom, right? But very early on, I had to make sure that they knew I studied this data in and out. So if you're going to go and you're going to say she doesn't belong in a general ed class, make sure it correlates with the data. And, plotting it out, kind of studying it ahead of time, analyzing it, looking at those trends, and having a visual makes a difference for sure.
Absolutely. I'm so excited because I want parents, and I remember as a classroom teacher very early on, I would try to tell my parents it was their meeting. It's not my meeting. Yeah. I'm just here to facilitate, to make sure that your kid gets what they need. And too often than not, parents feel like it's the school's job. The school's going to tell them the best way. And that's not typical. Right. And so I just want parents, more than everything, to hear, push the IEP. You are the presence of that IEP meeting. When you walk in there with your stuff, and you know and you can say, no, this is what happens. Okay, I hear you say this, but here's the data that I've collected. Here are the notes that you've sent home over the course of this last 6 weeks. And this is what I've noticed in the notes that you've sent home.
Yes.
When I've asked these questions, or you've given this information, be able to talk about what these notes have said and be able to share your concerns. So parents, the more prepared you are for that meeting, the better your meeting is going to go. Your team may not be on your side. Your team might say, we got to get these in and out in half an hour. That's not best practice, but it happens a lot of places. And so when school teams know parents are coming in with their stuff and are like, they make allotments and they change. And hopefully the culture of the school and how meetings are done changes because of parents like you. You're holding schools accountable for doing what's right by your child. And they know they have to do what's right by your child.
Yes. Yes.
Because there's someone to answer to. So I could just give you gold stars and yes. You're an amazing parent advocate. And I pray that more parents feel empowered like you do as they walk into the classroom or walk into these IEP meetings. Too many parents leave IEP meetings in tears.
Yes.
And as a culture, I want to do better on the school side to change that. But some of that change also is being able to prepare parents so they can walk in there and boss the meeting. Right. And data helps you as a parent become the boss.
Exactly. Yes. I was going to say, your child the best, right? So, and when you find a team that will trust that your child, that makes a world of difference. So Gabby's resource teacher, she actually just left in February, but for the last 2 years, she knew Gabby and she knew Gabby really well. And so you pay attention to the language that the IEP team uses, because you'll get a sense of, no, this person knows my child. I'm not so sure with this person. So you get a gauge of that as well. But know and have confidence when you go in that meeting, I know my child. And so, the data helps, because of course they also think the parents are going to be emotional and protective of their child. So that's where, show me different. This is your data. This is your log. And I'm just interpreting the data. That makes a world of difference, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's amazing. And again, parents, there are people you can reach out to who will help you navigate that and help you kind of put it together. And so reach out to the folks at MindWorks Collaborative. Reach out to people that you know. We met through a mutual friend. There are people in your community that will help you get that paperwork in order, so you can walk into that meeting with that confidence that you know your kid and you can't be told otherwise. We want the best for our kids in all of our schools. So thank you once again, Candice, for coming in and sharing your background and your beautiful daughter with us via Facebook and their wonderful stories. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody. So we'll see you in the next one and see you soon. Bye-bye.